Good evening. My name is Lindsay McCarthy, and I am a student member of Hamilton Think Tank. Thank you for attending tonight's community conversation panel entitled Student Stress Management, Balancing Self-Care with Academic Performance. The panel was produced by the students of Hamilton Think Tank, an academic student group of Residence Life University housing that meets every Tuesday at 5 o'clock in Collier Lounge in the Hamilton Residence Hall. If you're a student at University of Oregon and you would enjoy collaborating with peers and faculty to develop future panels, please consider joining our group. The Community Conversation Series is a living learning program of university housing. We would also like to thank our partnering sponsors, the Robert D. Clark Honors College, the Oregon Humanities Center, and the Undergraduate Studies. The students of the Hamilton Think Tank planned this discussion panel to precede Dead Week and finals in order for students to have an opportunity to assess their self-care and identify campus resources and healthy strategies for reducing stress. We are honored to welcome our three panelists this evening. Dr. Sanjay Srivastava is an assistant professor with the Department of Psychology and the director of the Srivastava Lab. Professor Srivastava researches person-environment interactions, interpersonal perception, emotions in social contexts, and personality dynamics and development. Michaela Krna is a graduate teaching fellow with the Department of Human Physiology. Michaela teaches a course titled The Art of Living in collaboration with the Art of the Living Foundation. Judith Kehoe is a licensed practical nurse with University of Oregon Student Health Center. Jude is a recognized expert in the practice of meditation and energy healing. She teaches the classes Relax and Renew with Meditation and Leadership Through Meditation. Please join me in welcoming our panelists.
Well, thanks for that introduction. And I guess I'll start the panel off. I think we're each going to talk for about 10 or 15 minutes or so and tell you a little bit about some different perspectives on student stress, and then I gather we're going to open it up to questions after that. My perspective on stress, I guess, is that my research area, one of my research areas is on emotions, and especially emotions in social interactions, emotions in social support. And so that's kind of where I'm coming at things. I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I can't help you, but maybe I can give you some information that'll help you help yourself. That's the hope, at least. So what I thought I'd do to start things off is just give you a little bit of background on the psychological research literature on stress and coping, obviously very brief. And I'm going to begin by saying a little bit about just what is stress from the perspective of a psychologist. What's a psychological perspective on stress? How does the mind relate to stress? And a little bit about some research on coping and social support and how people cope with stress. Ooh. Ooh.
It's on the side.
It's the
back button on the side.
Okay. There we go. I want you to imagine the following situation. Once a day, you don't know when, out of nowhere, a gigantic hand reaches down from the sky and picks you up, and completely unpredictable. And this hand picks you up, sort of shakes you around a little bit, sticks a huge needle in your stomach, and then drops you back down on the ground and leaves you to go about your business. That would probably, for most of us, be pretty stressful, right? This scenario is basically how stress was first discovered by a researcher named Hans Selye. Selye was a physiologist who was studying the digestive system, and he was doing basic research on gastric juices and digestion and things like that. And he noticed in his experiment, so when you do an experiment, you have a treatment group and a control group. So you'd give one group injections of gastric enzymes, then the other group would get a saline shot so that they'd have the same sort of interaction with the researcher, but they weren't actually getting getting these sort of enzymes. And what he noticed was all of his rats, even the ones in his control group, were developing ulcers. And he thought, something's going on here. And this was where research on stress came on. Of course, these laboratory rats would be sitting around in their cages minding their own business, and once a day a huge hand would reach down, pick them up, stick a needle in their stomach, and drop them back down. And they were pretty darn stressed out. And so Eli, rather than researching gastric function, decided he was going to figure out what was going on. And this is really the origin of stress research. Eli defines stress as the nonspecific response of the body to any demand made on it. By nonspecific, he means that stress involves lots and lots of different systems in the body. It's not just something that happens to your heart. It's not just something that happens to your breathing. It's something that involves the entire body. It's not just specific to one thing. And a broad definition of stress includes any demand, including physical demands like going outside without your coat on or something like that. But most of the time when we talk about stress, we're thinking of psychological stress. Most of the stressors that we face nowadays are things that they're not just physical demands like going outside without your coat on. They're demands made on our minds, demands made on our interactions with the world and with other people. The stress response, as I said, involves a lot of different things. And basically, when we're under stress, when we're stressed out by something, the body does, you can think of it as doing two different kinds of things. One thing it does is it activates short-term survival functions. So your heart will beat faster, your muscles will become tense. Interestingly, your memory starts to work better. You start to store things in memory better than you normally do. At the same time, your body deactivates long-term functions, things like immunity, digestion, and reproduction. And so you can see where a lot of the things that we think of as coming along with stress come out of this. Your immune system gets shut down. Your digestive system shuts down, which allows bacteria to grow in your gut, which causes ulcers. And people who are under extreme long-term stress have disrupted reproductive functions. In males, this would be impotence. In women, this would be disrupted menstruation. Now, why does your body do this when you're stressed out? This seems sort of counterproductive. And I should say even those short-term survival functions, a lot of the problems we associate with stress go with those too, right? So cardiovascular problems, heart attacks, things like that. Well, the stress response was evolved to help us deal with problems like what this zebra here unfortunately didn't quite deal with well enough, which is dealing with short-term immediate physical threats to our well-being. Our ancestors had to deal with things like predators. They had to deal with things like other people trying to kill them. They had to deal with these sort of severe physical dangers. And the costs and benefits of sort of a brief ramping up of your body's short-term functions in order to be able to run away or fight back, and a brief suppression of these long-term functions. If you got away from the lion, then great, everything goes back to normal. And if you didn't, it doesn't matter if you have a heart attack 20 years later because you're not going to make it that long. So our bodies are geared towards these kind of short-term survival processes, but most of the stressors we face nowadays are not like that. They're not these sort of short-term threats that require a quick, immediate physical response. They tend to be longer-term, repeated, and they tend to be the kind of thing where, frankly, getting all worked up like that isn't really going to help you, right? When you're sitting in a final exam and you're stressed out, getting up and running away or running to the front of the room and attacking somebody or something is not really going to make the stressor go away. In fact, it might make things worse. I'll just sort of put that out there. So our bodies deal with stress in a way that's sort of broadly adaptive to the conditions that our ancestors lived in, and frankly, still adaptive in a lot of situations today. It's a really good thing if you accidentally don't notice the light and step out into the street and a bus is coming towards you at 30 miles an hour. For you suddenly your heart gets faster and your muscles tense up and you jump back. So it does still help us today, but a lot of the stressors that we face today do not really fit this kind of response that our bodies have. So as a result, we get, with these chronic stressors, when we're under stress a lot, when we're under stress repeatedly and for long periods of time, there's wear and tear on these short-term functions. So your cardiovascular system, when it's repeatedly put under this stress, will get worn out. And I hate to say it because I know a major source of student stress is studying, but your memory will have potentially impaired function because this ramping up of storage in your memory, when it's chronic and repeated, can cause cell death in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for encoding new memories. So not cool. And as I said, these long-term functions shut down as well, and you can have things like digestive problems, and even in the long term, stunted growth and stunted reproduction. So that's what the body does. Now, where does this come from? How do psychologists think about stress? And I mentioned that a lot of stressors are not just these sort of purely physical stressors. A lot of stressors involve the mind in some way or another. Psychologists have long known that interpretations matter. The way we interpret potential stressors, the way we interpret potential threats matter. And our interpretations, the way psychologists think about this is broken down into two different phases. The first is what a psychologist would call a primary appraisal. So the first thing that happens when a potentially stressful thing happens is that your mind makes a quick judgment of, is this something important and meaningful? Is this something I should be worried about in the first place? Is there some sort of a threat involved or a potential threat involved? And then after that, you start to think through, well, what are the resources I have or don't have available to deal with it? And this combination can really determine what kind of a response you'll have to the stressor. So one important distinction that researchers have begun to make that affects the physiology, not just the sort of mental experience of stress, is whether you interpret something as a threat or as a challenge. So if you think about those two appraisals, that primary appraisal having to do with, how important is this? Is this something that's meaningful to my well-being? And then that secondary appraisal, do I have the resources available to deal with this? Well, if you think about the balance between those two, if something requires a response but you feel up to it, you're more likely to view it as a challenge. So if you have an exam coming up and you feel well prepared and that you've studied for it, it's not the case that you'll waltz in there, with your blood pressure, down at whatever low blood pressure would be, 80 or whatever, and you'll be all calm, but you'll interpret it as more of a challenge, as something that you're up to. If you wake up the morning of your exam and send one of those emails I get periodically, I just noticed there's a quiz on the syllabus. Is that really happening today? If you're in that boat, then you will have a different interpretation. It will feel more threatening to you. And these different interpretations have been associated with different physiological responses. So people that interpret an event as a challenge have better cardiovascular functioning when they're dealing with the threat. It's not that they don't have a stress response, but it's a different response. There's less constriction of the blood vessels, for example, involved with that. Perceived control also affects people's experience of stress. So believing that an event is under your control. And this relates again to this idea of having resources to deal with it. Predictability. So over and above whether you can control it, if you can at least see it coming, that seems to help people manage their stress responses more. And then finally, these appraisals are not automatic, they're not deterministic entirely. You do have some influence over the way that you think about and interpret stressors. And in fact, a lot of meditation techniques are really targeted at trying to change the way you think about stressors. And similarly, a lot of psychological therapies. The kind of therapy that we teach our graduate students here in the Department of Psychology who are going to go on and become clinicians. The kind of therapy they learn is cognitive therapy, which really targets these kinds of beliefs. So if you believe that you're worthless, if you believe that you're not up to the task, if you believe that everything's overwhelming and everyone's out to get you, that's a problem, but that's something that you can change. So before I wrap up, or as my sort of final thing, I'd just like to talk briefly about some of the many ways that people cope with stress. Coping with stress the ways of coping with stress are as varied as the kinds of stress that there are out there. And I'm not going to get into, obviously, all the ways you can cope with stress, but I want to talk about some of the broad distinctions that psychologists make. one of the distinctions that seems to matter a lot is the difference between what are called active strategies versus avoidance strategies. So if you think of all the ways that you could deal with a stressful situation, whether it's an exam, whether it's a difficult relationship, anything like that, active strategies are strategies that where you're actually dealing with either the stressor itself or with your emotional response to the stressor, but you're doing something about either the stressor or the stress itself. Avoidance strategies are things that just try to get you away from it or not deal with it. So drinking is a classic example of an avoidance strategy, not helpful in the long run as a way of dealing with stress. Within this category of active strategies, you can draw a distinction between what you'd call problem-focused strategies, where you're trying to deal with the cause of the stress itself. So planning, when you have an assignment coming up, planning will help people feel less stressed out about what they're doing. Of course, working, if it's a project you have to work on, getting help from other people is another problem-focused strategy. And then emotion-focused strategies target the emotional consequences of the stressor. So things like using humor, using relaxation, using exercise to help your body relax. These don't necessarily make the stressor go away, but they help you manage your emotional responses while you're dealing with the stressor. It's not the case that any problem-focused and any emotion-focused strategy is always good. It's not the case that one is uniformly better than the other. But oftentimes, problem-focused strategies are better in the long run, and emotion-focused strategies sort of help you while you're taking care of the problem. They help you manage along the way. And then finally, related to these is the idea that social support is enormously important in dealing with stress. And it's something that I think we often kind of forget about or lose track of, or we don't really think of as something that we can do anything about when we're stressed out. Having other people to support you helps decrease your stress response. Both what's called instrumental support, which means actually helping you with the problem, as well as emotional support, just having someone there who you can talk to, who you can express your emotions to. And in addition, just believing that others are available to provide you with support, even if you don't actually go out and get it, even if you don't actually go out and ask for it, produces a reduced stress response. So just knowing and believing that others are available to you. And finally, this is my last slide, just to say a little bit about what you can do about social support. One thing is to be proactive, to put in place the conditions for social support before the stress really catches up with you. So things like organizing study groups early in the term is something I always suggest to students in my classes as a way to both to do better in the class, but also to have other people you can study with, so get that instrumental support. You can complain about your professor. I know nobody ever does that, but I'm just saying in theory that might be something that would help a little bit. And also proactively making plans in advance so you don't get completely swamped by what you're doing. To not hide your feelings. There are problems, of course, associated with if you're always compulsively going to your friends and whining and whatever else. But I think more often with people, with students, they sort of feel like, well, everybody else has it worse than me. I'm just not going to tell them what's going on. I'm just going to try to sort of work my way through it. And that's something that really precludes a lot of the support that you might otherwise be getting. If you don't tell people that you're stressed out, they can't show sympathy, they can't offer you support because they don't know that you need it. And then finally, giving support to others. Social support is a reciprocal process, and being supportive to others creates the kinds of relationships that will help you. So that's my sort of overview of stress and coping, and I guess maybe we'll just sort of go along with the panel and then kind of take questions. We'll all take questions together towards the end, unless there are any burning questions about what I said didn't make sense. Okay, no. So I guess Michaela wanted to.
Okay. So how is your guys' stress level on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being highly stressed out with school winding up and finals coming. 12. Wow. 15. Well, it's a good thing you're here then. So, let's see. Okay, so the world consists of two different things in one perspective. It's the outside world and your inner world. So in the outside world, you have people, situations, and things. And then in the internal world, you have different avenues to deal with how you perceive all these people, situations, and things. And let's see. Oh, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Michaela Krna. I'm a first-year graduate student here at the U of O, and I'm in the neuroscience department, and we'll be studying meditation techniques and also stress. And I'm a volunteer with the Art of Living Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization, and we're active in over 147 countries, and we offer educational programs to help people live more effectively and efficiently in their day-to-day lives. And we also offer humanitarian projects to help uplift the world around us. So there's my background. Let's see. So in life, you know, as you live life, you start developing different patterns of dealing with external situations that come to you. And actually these get ingrained within the nervous system, so you keep on repeating habits. Some are favorable to you and some are not so favorable to you. And the way to live more effectively is to first be able to recognize your unfavorable habits and then become proactive to take a stand and choose to change. There are different avenues and ways to do that, but with the Art of Living Foundation, the internal world is developed around our 7 layers of existence, which is the body, the breath, the mind, the intellect, the memory, and the ego. And really it can be separated into the body, the breath, and the mind, encompassing the intellect, memory, and ego. And the breath is a great tool that connects the body and the mind. If you think of the mind as a kite that's flying in the sky and the breath as the string and the body holding it, if you cut the string, suddenly the kite goes hither and thither and yon, and there's no way to control or have it, not control, but to guide the kite in the way that you'd want it to. So the breath is a great tool to use to, especially when you're stressed, to counteract the stress response into a more relaxation response, so you can balance out your body and get back on track. Before I continue on, I'll just show you a video that might sum up more than what I can do here.
I think we might have to watch it again.
So while we're here, let's see how well we actually breathe. Just take a normal breath in and let it go. Did you notice how deep or shallow or long or smooth or shaky your breath was? Or any of you, did anyone take notice of any of the characteristics? Just notice if the breath coming in is cool or hot. Just trying to notice different things. The more you can become familiar with your body and your breath, the more you can learn about it. And actually, I was just talking to a respiratory physiologist, and 80% of the toxins in our body are removed through the breathing and the lungs. All of our blood is purified through breathing. Very little is actually purified from sweating and excretion. So it's a great tool, and I'll let MSNBC tell you guys some more, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Gene causes death. I saved that one off. How to reduce stress? Ever heard somebody just tell you, just breathe, and you just wanted to smack them? Downtown's Monica Novotny joins me now with the news that perhaps they were right. Good evening, Monica.
Good evening. It is called The Art of Living, a course designed to teach people how to breathe. And though the group was founded 22 years ago by a spiritual guru, the class is not about religion and it is not about meditation. It is simply about students inhaling and exhaling and potentially healing themselves in the process.
The very first act in life that we did is we took a breath in, and the very last thing we're going to do before we go is we take a breath out.
But everything in between may just be blowing hot air. So Poonam Tandon teaches the art of breathing to heal the sick and the stressed.
When we're having certain emotions like anger or depression, anxiety, it affects our breath, right? So we can actually turn the relationship around and use the breath to affect the emotions. Breathe in and continue.
A $250 20-hour course using the ins and outs of respiration as a weapon against illness.
As the stress system becomes active, a lot of hormones, inflammatory chemicals are released in the body, and they tear up your heart, they tear up your blood vessels, they tear up your brain.
Dr. Richard Brown, a psychiatrist specializing in depression, spent years prescribing traditional medications. Now he joins many of his patients here.
And I said, I feel transformed. And a lot of them were able to reduce their medicines, and in some cases go off the medicines after years of being on medicine.
The core of the course, a yoga breathing technique regulating the energy in the nervous system, taught in 3 levels. The first 2, but the last, called Sudarshan Kriya, they will not let us show you, because they say if you tried it without an instructor, you could hurt yourself. Something Dr. Brown saw with one uninformed 18-year-old.
And he started doing it for a couple of hours. For the next 3 days, he didn't tell anybody. He started thinking he was Jesus Christ. No, I can't do that.
In 2000, a study by doctors at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in India found that daily practice of Sudarshan Kriya was as effective as an antidepressant for treating patients with severe depression.
Elbows as high as you can get them.
Believers see it as a low-cost treatment for disease with worldwide potential.
There are only about 50 students in this class, but around the world in 146 different countries, they say more than 6 million people have taken this course.
But even some students have to breathe it to believe it.
I started to laugh. I had to like hold back. I felt funny.
For the past 10 years, I was suffering with depression. I came here completely skeptical.
And now, after learning how to breathe at home 20 minutes each day,
I'm on no medication at all. I don't see any of my psychiatrists. I sleep like a baby.
It's life. It's about the art of living.
Volunteers from the Art of Living Foundation have taught this course around the world, recently in Baghdad, to a group of women and children suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder there. Now, they say studies show this practice is not only therapeutic for stress and depression, it may also benefit the immune system, reduce cholesterol, enhance brain function, and improve overall health and well-being. And there's more information on our website at countdown.msnbc.com.
Can I smoke while I do it?
So let's see. When I was an undergraduate and in my final semester, I was trying to take the GRE and all the work and do school, and I was very stressed out, much like I'm sure many of you are. And I found this course, and I found that I was much more effective at the things that I needed to do, and I got them done faster. It was actually quite amazing, and I was more energetic. That was one of the problems I was having. Is I would go to school, come home, go to work, come home, and try to study, and I had no energy. And I'm like, okay, well, how is this going to work? You know. So I found that the more energy I could keep moving in my system, and releasing negative energy. And the more effective I was at handling the situations that were put in front of me, and I actually found them fun and a challenge rather than a demand that was being put on me. So it's a slightly shift of perspective, as we were seeing from the psychological standpoint. And when I found this course, I was a biology major, and I was like, ooh, I want to do research on this and find out more about what's happening with the physiological measures, and that's why I'm here. So I can show you guys some breathing techniques, one of which really helped me. Usually around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I usually get kind of tired. And, the day's not over yet, so you still have to continue. So would you guys like to learn a breathing technique that will invigorate you? Okay. We might have to, are these chairs attached? Okay, maybe spread them out a little bit because you need a little space. Yeah, I don't need that anymore. So let's first just close our eyes so we can become familiar with our own breath. And place your left hand on your belly button and your right hand on your chest, just so we can kind of gauge and see how it is that we breathe on a regular basis. And just take a normal breath in. And let it go. Now take a longer breath in, letting your left hand extend outwards as your belly button and stomach get filled up with air like a balloon. And then your right hand starts elevating as your chest expands. And you feel a little bit of tightness, and you're fully breathing in and breathe out. Letting the air out from the stomach, releasing it from the chest. Let's take another long, deep breath in. And breathe out. Take another long, deep breath in. And let it go. Now notice how your state of mind is at this point in time. Notice the rate of your own breathing. Has it changed from before we took a few long, deep breaths in? And slowly open your eyes whenever you're ready. Did anybody notice a shift in just those few long, deep breaths? It's amazing. We only use really about 20-25% of our lung capacity when we're busy doing other things. So when you start to feel stress coming on, if you can just take a couple of seconds to take long, deep breaths in and out to use your full lung capacity, it can really, just that small shift can make a big difference. But now we'll try something that will make an even more impact. This breath is called bellows breathing, or Bhastrika, and I'll just show it to you. So you sit with your spine straight. The palms of your hands are in a loose fist by the sides of your shoulders, and you can just watch me first. As you breathe in, you extend your hands up and spread the palms and your fingers as wide as they can go, and taking a full breath in. And as you breathe out, your hands come down quickly, and your forearms hit the side of your ribs, pushing out the rest of the air, so it looks like this. Is it clear how it's done? Okay, so we'll try it. So we'll close our eyes because all these experiences are internal, and you can really process and see what's happening when your eyes are closed and 1/4 of your brain is automatically turned off. So taking a normal, natural breath in and let it go. And together, extend your arms up, breathing in and out. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And relax, keeping your eyes closed. Placing your hands in your lap, resting easily. Notice the change of energy in your own body. Any thoughts in your mind, just simply notice what's happening. Keeping our eyes closed, let's bring our hands back up to in a loose fist by the sides of the shoulders. Normal breath in and let it go. And up, down, up, down, up, down. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And relax, keeping your eyes closed. Notice how the body and the mind feels with the increase of oxygen coming into the body. Releasing excess and stored up carbon dioxide. We'll do one more round, bringing the hands up besides the sides of the shoulders in a loose fist. Normal, natural breath in, and breathe out. And up, down, up, down, up, down. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and relax. Once again, just take notice. See what's happening in your own body and mind. Let's take a long, deep breath in. And breathe out. Another long, deep breath in. And breathe out. Taking your own time. Whenever you feel complete, you can slowly open your eyes. So how do we feel now? Anybody want to share? We're all stunned with silence.
I'm ready to write my paper.
Yay! Do you notice how you feel lighter and a little bit more energetic, and maybe the room's a little bit brighter, and it's almost like you took a little 10-minute cat nap? Anyway, so if anybody wants to share, feel free. If not, I could carry on forever, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jude. And, yeah.
I thought that was fabulous.
Excellent.
I just thought that was great.
I find it very invigorating.
It's very, and I noticed in the beginning I was kind of dizzy.
Yeah, it's the increase of oxygen.
The first round, then I was like, the second round, am I going to fall off the chair? That's going to be embarrassing. And then by the third round, I felt much better. So that's really great. I want to do that.
It's fantastic.
That is great. So my name is Jude Kehoe, and I'm a nurse, a certified healing touch practitioner, and a meditation instructor at the health center, and also I have my own business doing energy healing, and I teach meditation out in the community also. So I've done meditation for about 35 years, and I've done a lot of different techniques. And when I started doing energy healing, that's when my meditation really deepened. And I think that one of the reasons is because I started really understanding the relaxation technique. And it is so important for college students. You know that stress is the number one health concern for college students. And so it's really important for you guys to get a handle on your stress and to identify emotionally, mentally, physically, and behaviorally what the signs and symptoms of stress are and what your stressors are around you in your life, either environmentally or socially or financially, whatever challenges you have that stress you out and that induce that fight and flight response. And there are so many students coming into the health center with panic attacks and with anxiety and lots of stress management challenges in their lives. So if you can learn how to induce the relaxation response within yourself, which is what this breathing technique does, it disengages the fight and flight response. So it works in the same part of the brain as the fight and flight response. And the relaxation response is a term that was defined by Dr. Herbert Benson, and he's a cardiologist. And in the 70s, he started noticing that stress and hypertension and heart disease may be connected. And all his colleagues thought he was crazy. They thought that stress had nothing to do with heart problems. And of course, we know today that it's definitely those stress hormones, when they're released into your body over and over and over again, they really cause a lot of health problems, hypertension, heart disease, gastrointestinal problems, respiratory problems, insomnia, drug and alcohol abuse and use, tobacco use. Just the list goes on and on that where stress is connected to disease processes. So I really believe, there are lots of ways that you can induce the relaxation response. You can do it by exercise. Laughing is a great way of inducing the relaxation response. And I can remember when I was a kid, I had a neighbor, and she and I used to have these laughing contests to see how long we could laugh, and we'd get laughing so hard we couldn't stop laughing. And then our parents would get really mad, and they'd tell us to shut up because we'd just be really annoying. But it's so healthy. And, as you get older, you don't laugh as much as, when you were young like that. And so laughing is a great way of inducing the relaxation response. But another way of doing it is through meditation. And the reason I think meditation is really good for stress management is it covers the two components of stress, which is the emotional, mental component, where your perception of the perceived demand or threat. It covers that because it changes your consciousness. It changes the way that you look at things. And then it covers the physical component of the fight and flight response by inducing the relaxation response. And the relaxation response is when your heart rate, your breath rate, your blood pressure, your circulation increases, but those other organs decrease. And you get this sense of well-being when the relaxation response is induced. So meditation does that, and besides that, it develops other mental qualities. Your mind becomes steadier. you become more centered. You have more flexibility of mind. You can multitask easier and come back to being centered. Your concentration, your memory improves. And you get more creative because you have this spaciousness around you. And those are just some of the benefits of meditation. And I think that there's a lot of myths around meditation, that you have to meditate for long periods of time to get benefit. But I teach that you do short meditations throughout the day. This breathing technique would be a great short meditation to do. I mean, you wouldn't want to do it in the middle of the classroom or, something like that, but,
You get called
go into the bathroom, into a stall, and, but just, you could do, your brain, your long-term memory, you do things over and over again, and that's how it gets into your long-term memory. So the same with meditation. So if you do 30 seconds to 60 seconds of bringing yourself into the present moment, because meditation is centering and focusing your mind, bringing yourself into the present moment, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past, but being right here, right now, and becoming the observer of yourself. And, we have 1,000 thoughts a minute, the average person, 6,000 thoughts an hour, and 100,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. I mean, there are so many thoughts, we don't even know what we're thinking half the time. So when you just stop and for 30 seconds, just take a breath and just observe what you're thinking at that minute. Sometimes it's kind of shocking. And when people first start meditating, they can't believe what they're thinking because you're not even aware of it half the time. And that can really help with stress management. So if you do that 4 or 5 times a day and then just do more extended practice, 15 minutes 6 days a week or 30 minutes 3 days a week, you can get results from meditation. So I would really encourage you to learn, you can come to my class. I teach it every term. It's called Relax and Renew, and it's just a 6-week class once a week for an hour. And, there's classes taught in the rec center and, learn the breathing techniques, different things that you can do to deal with your stress, because as you get older and you bring these techniques with you, you'll just get better and better and better at them as you go on in your life. And it's not going to get any less stressful out there. So learning how to deal with it now is just a really huge advantage. So I don't know if I have time to do an autonomic relaxation technique. Would you guys like to just briefly do that? Okay, so this works with the autonomic nervous system, which is the involuntary nervous system. And so what I want you to do is just sit straight, and I'm going to say some phrases, and they're going to be focusing on different parts of your body. And I want you to focus on the phrase that I say. For instance, I'm going to say, my arms and legs are heavy and warm. And I want you to say that phrase to yourself and center on that phrase, and then peripherally be aware of the sensations in your arms and your legs. Okay? And then I'll go to different places in your body. So close your eyes. Sit up straight and just be in a comfortable position. And just center for a moment on your breath, breathing in and breathing out. And then I want you to put your attention on your arms and your legs, from the top of your shoulders down to the tips of your fingers, from your hips down your legs to your feet, and say the phrase, "My arms and legs are heavy and warm." You're centering on the phrase, "My arms and legs are heavy and warm." Your mind wanders, gently bring it back to the phrase, "My arms and legs are heavy and warm." Now take a few easy breaths, letting go of that phrase, and move your attention to the center of your chest. Notice how it expands and contracts as you breathe in and breathe out. And say the phrase, "My chest is calm and peaceful." My chest is calm and peaceful. My chest is calm and peaceful. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back to the phrase, "My chest is calm and peaceful." Now take a few easy breaths, letting go of that phrase, and move your attention to the bottom of your rib cage, right in the center where your diaphragm attaches to your ribs. And notice for a moment as you breathe in and breathe out how your rib cage expands and contracts as you inhale and exhale. And center on the phrase, "My breath is free and easy." My breath is free and easy. 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 Now let go of that phrase, taking a few easy breaths, and move your attention to your lower abdomen and focus on the phrase, my abdomen is warm and comfortable. My abdomen is warm and comfortable. You're peripherally being aware of the sensations in your abdomen as you're centering on the phrase, my abdomen is warm and comfortable. My abdomen is warm and comfortable. My abdomen is warm and comfortable. Take a few easy breaths, letting go of that phrase, and move your attention to your face as you say the phrase, my face is soft and smiling. 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 Take a few easy breaths, letting go of that. Reflect on your experience. Notice if your body feels any different. Notice your breath. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes, feeling your hands and your feet. Okay. Anyone want to comment on their experience with that at all? Okay.
When you were talking about focusing on your breath being free, it was really weird because like the first thing that came into my mind was kind of like a lake, and like as I was focusing on that one, the water just got really, really calm. That was the only thing that was in my mind, which is really hard because like stuff going on all the time, and it was really cool because I kind of, it's weird because I forgot I was breathing, focusing, but it was just so free, I guess. It's hard to describe.
Free and easy,
really
huh?
Relaxed and really tranquil.
Great. That's great. Good job. Anyone else?
Notice how hard it was to center on just retaining that thought. And every time I notice myself thinking of something else, I felt my heart rate increase. And like my breath started to get a little bit faster, but then as soon as I could get back in the thought and just thinking about that, just concentrating my breath, like everything slowed down so much. I just really feel it, like a deeper sense of feeling.
That is great. Observing that about yourself is just
It
wonderful.
shows me folks, like in the past when I've tried meditation, I almost got like stressed out about it because I keep thinking about other things. I'm like, no, don't think about that. Think about this. And so it teaches me that it's something I can work on in meditation.
Well, and the other thing is not to judge it. Just sit with it. Just sit with it and just observe it and be curious about it. Say, that's interesting. But don't try and psychoanalyze it or...
But it felt good to come to
Right, back to the center.
But it just teaches me, trying to retrain yourself to just be calm with it and just focus on it.
That's good. Good job.
It's interesting because you hear people say all the time that we have so many thoughts going through our head every day, but you don't, like, I never really realized it until just now when you sit there and think, okay, I only think about one thing, and my mind went off to like 4 different things. It's like, no, wait, come back. It should be so easy just to focus on one thing, but it's not.
It's a lifelong practice. It never stops. You know, it's a lifelong practice. So, yep. Anyone else? Mm-hmm.
My mind just kind of feels like it expanded. Like I had my eyes closed and it was kind of like I was in darkness, but it's like the room expanded when I was breathing.
Great. That's good. Okay. Are there any other questions for any of us?
What's your class offering?
It's on Wednesdays, and it's usually between 5 and 6 on Wednesdays. And we usually, and it'll be advertised. You'll see it in the Emerald and
Where do you sign up?
at the health center. There'll be information about doing it. And you can, call me there and ask me when it is. It's usually, we start about the 3rd week or so of the term.
Yeah, it will be. I'm not an instructor, so I need to have an instructor come in. It's a 5-day course, and I'm hoping to set it up either for next semester or just after spring break.
And it's just those 5 days.
Well, it'll be those 5 days, and then the Sudarshan Kriya breathing technique they wouldn't show in the video. Once a week we get together as a group to do a long breathing practice. You have a take-home practice that you can do daily. And so, yeah, you keep on doing it weekly if you choose to. Yeah, I have more information which I'll hand out to you guys as we're leaving. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention, doing the bellows breathing, you just do 15 to 20, that being 1. And up to 3 times, and only do it once, maybe twice a day, or else it's not that great. You'll get a little too lightheaded, and try to do it not on a full stomach, or else you could get an upset stomach. So, things I've learned along the way.
Maybe you said this, but does that technique like energize as well as relax, like something you could do in the morning to like wake up as well as like before bed too?
This one? When I do it too late at night, it keeps me up. It's kind of like having a cup of coffee in the morning. Not that I drink coffee anymore because I just do this. So I'd recommend it either in the morning to get going or in the afternoon when you're feeling sluggish, and instead of reaching for a cup of coffee or a candy bar. Much better.
So I guess I have a
So the state the body's in when you're in relaxation mode compared to sleep, physiologically and psychologically, what would the difference be between being asleep or being meditating, breathing exercise? How would you distinguish between the state the body's in those two?
Well, when you're meditating, you're fully awake. In fact, I think it's the most awake stage that you can be in, but you're totally relaxed. But when you're sleeping, you're not aware of. You can use, meditation to fall asleep, but if you're really going to meditate, you want to be sitting up and awake. But it puts you into a different consciousness.
And being asleep wouldn't necessarily be relaxed.
Well, sometimes people sleep and they're not relaxed, but some people sleep and they're relaxed. I mean, I'm not understanding what.
I guess that was just the question. Is somebody simply because you're sleeping, is that the same as being relaxed? Or could you fall asleep and still, just physiologically and psychologically, the state you're in when you're asleep, would that necessarily be the same as being relaxed?
Well, for instance, I deal with a lot of chronic pain patients, and people who have fibromyalgia don't sleep, don't completely go into that deep sleep, so they never really relax the whole night, and so they wake up exhausted. So you can be under a lot of stress, and your mind can be going, and your body really isn't relaxed. So that's another reason to learn how to really deeply relax. You could probably answer that.
Oh yeah, I mean there's sleep and there's sleep.
Yeah.
And certain aspects of sleep that are restorative can get disrupted when you're stressed out. Alcohol can and actually a lot of sleeping medications suppress REM sleep, which is the dreaming stage, which seems to have a lot of restorative functions. So that's part of it. Also, trying to sleep when you're stressed out can, one, not be productive because you might not fall asleep, and two, can actually cause insomnia. So one of the things that happens when you associate going to bed and lying in your bed with thinking about what stresses you out is that that can actually be a cause of insomnia. So sleep therapists, sleep researchers recommend if you can't fall asleep, get up, and after about 15 or 20 minutes, if you're not falling asleep, get up, do something sort of quiet, relaxing, and low light, so that you don't sort of fully wake up your body, but don't just lie there in bed going, "Oh, I wish I could sleep. Oh, I wish I could sleep," because that'll actually that can be counterproductive. Also, this is hard to do in dorms, I know, but not doing work in bed, not watching TV in bed. So having your bed be the place that you sleep, and doing studying and thinking and whatever else in other places also, because it's sort of very simple, almost Pavlovian learning. Your body learns to associate bed, sleep, studying, not in bed. And yeah.
Also, meditating gets you to that very deep state of rest in a pretty short period of time. So I think it's 20 minutes of meditation is equal to about 4 hours of restful sleep. So as far as restorative properties and levels of energy and actually being restful go, at least that's what I've heard.
I have a question for you, Michaela.
Yeah.
I felt like the breathing technique that you showed us had a lot of similarities in terms of benefits that it could help people with. Some of the same ones as exercising, and I was curious as to whether you knew whether your breathing techniques were more or less able to decrease stress than exercise generally.
Well, there are other breathing techniques that aren't so physical, which we could do at a different point in time. But the effects that exercise has on the body and nervous system are definitely different than the effects that the breathing techniques and meditation have on the body.
In terms of like how much they decrease stress, though, like I realize that there are differences, but how much would doing those breathing techniques possibly decrease stress, and how would that relate to how much exercise would decrease your stress?
Personally, I found, because I'm a big fan of running, I found that the breathing techniques, for me, sustain a lower stress threshold, or I'm able to function longer in the day without feeling stressful versus, I go for a run, which actually kicks up some of the stress hormones in your body, and then your body settles down. But the long-term effects over the day of that run don't extend as long as it does for the breathing. Does that make sense? But both are equally good, and even better if you do them together. And yeah, there are different breathing techniques as well, like for balancing the body, like times you just, either you're feeling very indecisive or very unbalanced, and you're just like, I don't know which direction to go. There are different breathing techniques that you can do for that, and we could do a whole, many breathing session at some point, but did I answer your question? Okay. Yeah. I just carry on. And anyway.
Can I add something about something that's really interesting about so many relaxation and meditation techniques involve the breath, and there are so many dimensions to that. It's really interesting. One of the things that I find especially, and I sort of talked about as if the mind controls the body, which it does, but the body also controls the mind. They sort of, obviously are reciprocal. And one of the interesting things about breathing and sort of this sense of control is that when you feel out of control, and especially in social situations, but in other situations, if you think about the body language of somebody who is either not in control of a situation or somebody who's in a sort of low position of authority or a submissive position, it's like this. It's that sort of collapsed posture in the front, and that affects your breathing. And when you do a lot of these breathing techniques, it forces you to sort of take this expansive posture, which is the posture of someone who's calm and comfortable and, in control of things. And so, certainly in interpersonal situations, if you are, trying to have a conversation with your roommate about dirty dishes in the sink, or with your partner about whatever you talk about with your partner, and you've got this sort of, you're stressed out and you feel out of control and you're sort of hunched over like this, that sends social signals as well as internally sending bodily signals. And if you feel sort of, not that you want to be like this when you're, talking to your roommate about the dishes, but, there are a lot of connections among the sort of the way you're thinking about the situation and what your body is doing, and they sort of feed back on each other in some really sometimes surprising ways.
Something else that just struck my memory is that with working out, you develop a rhythm in your breath, which maintains. There are rhythms in nature, as we know, and rhythms in the breath. So when you're feeling, anxious, your breath is very short and shallow, and when you're happy, it's more like, or you see something really beautiful, you usually take a deep breath in, and so the breath plays a rhythm. So exercise certainly can have those beneficial effects to relieve stress, to get the rhythm and the breath going, to maintain